Hello guys, I'm going to start doing a little bit of a painting video. This is for beginners to kind of see how I do my painting. And to start up, I wanted to show how you get a good setup for really cheap. So if you go to your local Target or Walmart, you can pick up one of these for about $3 or $4. You want an X-Acto knife for cleaning up your miniatures, and then these are about 97 cents, which is great. I was lucky as a gift I got a really nice paintbrush set, and I do use it, but I often find myself using these cheap ones too because they have a little bit more stiff bristles, which is good for the small details. So I'm going to be painting today a mimic. So I got, grab this real fast, I got this in the mail, and I painted one here, as you can see. Let it focus on it. One of the things that we'll be going over is how messy painting can be, and then you kind of just fix the details. I also want to go over something called dry brushing today. Those three things, once you learn those, you can do anything, because I'm no painter, and I haven't painted more than maybe 30 miniatures, and I'm doing pretty good, I'd say. So I want to show you an example of dry brushing that I think is important to see. So when you see like a pre-made miniature, you'll see that it's really blocky. Let me show you a good example of dry brushing here. So when you get a miniature in the store and it's pre-painted, I'm going to show you one, and you'll see what I mean. When they put paint on it, it's very blocky, as in it's all solid colors. So check out this Rogue. This is something that came pre-painted. So if you'll see that the hood is gray, the shirt is red, it's all solid black, solid brown, solid gray, everything's solid colors, right? Well, with dry brushing, you take your brush, and instead of glooping it in wet paint and then smearing it over, which would give you a solid color, you kind of pat off as much paint as possible so that's basically a dry brush, but it's still got a little bit of pigment on it. So when you rub it over, it will do a light coat. So a good example of solid is like, you see the red here is solid, the tan here is solid, but then I dry brushed highlights. But the other thing is this blue in the wing. If I was to take a really wet brush with blue paint on it and go over the wing, it would just be a solid blue over it. But instead I took a very dry brush, rubbed it in, and it kind of powdered it with blue. So that's really important to learn how to do it. I'll show that in the video. And then another thing is, when you also dry brush, you can use, since the brush is so dry, this was a little bit more wet but it's still pretty dry. If you paint a base color of blue and then you take a pretty dry brush of purple and rub it over, it's not really going to go deep down into the cracks. So it's a really good way to like start with a darker paint, and then well, this is a bad example because I started with a lighter paint, but if you want to do, like, here's a good example. So I started with a darker red in the gums, and then I dry brushed over that, like that fleshy color, and it made it so it highlighted it, while deep in the crevices were the darker red. So it gives it a little bit more depth. And yeah, so we'll learn a little bit about that. Pretty simple, but today I'm going to be painting the other mimic. So I did the first mimic, and you can see on the tongue I dry brushed, so those little cracks, they show detail. And yeah, this is a pretty simple one. I got the colors picked out. The colors I use, I got as a gift for Christmas from my mother. She gave me this, and it's all the paints I have except for a couple washes. And I really recommend buying this. For $118, I've painted, I think that's what these cost, 50 paints. I can blend any color I want. I haven't really needed to buy colors. Every color I've wanted, I've been able to mix. But it even comes with some washes too, which I didn't know when I bought it or when I got it. But I've painted lots of miniatures, a lot of big ones too, and this has been great. And I still have plenty of paint. Like, you'd be surprised, like every miniature I paint usually uses a lot of brown, especially like the farmers and the chests and stuff like that. And I still have, you know, almost 3/4 full, because these are so small and the pigment is so fine that it doesn't take much paint. So, like I said, cheap. Let's start with our miniature. So, the first thing I'm going to do here is put it in a little holder. If you don't have one of these, that's totally fine. You don't always have to use it. I think it helps to have something to kind of keep it steady, but sometimes they pop out anyway, so I might not use this. I will. Okay, we're going to start with the base color, which I'm going to use Army Painter's Oak Brown. Alright, I love this, by the way. This is an amazing hobby. Due to copyrights, I can't play music or audiobooks. But I do usually listen to audiobooks or listen to music or news or something like that while I'm painting. I'm going to take a brush. Something doesn't need to be as precise for what I'm doing because I'm going to be going over with layers. So first things first, I'm going to paint the wood. I got the oak brown. just kind of go over the first layer. And these are pre-primed. So now one thing I want to do is get better at editing so I can just speed through this process. And those are cool. And I'd like to get a little bit better at videos, because on my channel I'm going to start having my D&D group play games and then put the games online. My buddy does on his Twitch stream. And I also play Magic the Gathering, so I've made some deck techs over there too on this YouTube channel. As you can see, getting kind of sloppy. I'm getting it on the bands of the barrel. You can see I've got some brown there, but I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to be going over this with other colors, and then I'll be a little bit more detail oriented once I'm at that stage. Now, I recommend, if you're getting into painting miniatures, one thing I would say to beginners is that maybe not focus on monsters, as cool as they are to paint. I would say focus on townspeople and stuff. One of the big misconceptions when people paint miniatures is like they want to paint a beholder like this, right? And they get their beholder and they paint it, and then they're like, alright, let's start a campaign. And then they end up like using coins and stuff to represent like the barkeepers and the things that are in every campaign. So there's these things on Amazon you can buy for pretty cheap, and it's like tables and chairs and like farms people and barmaids, and I actually prefer those the most. So as my miniatures goes, I find I use them way more, and if you come across a monster, it is nice to have the miniature for it, but I always say first things first, right? So first things first, get yourself a town set up, because that's where you're going to be, and people are more important, unless you're running some crazy campaign where everything's underwater, so everybody's mermen, right? So I got the barrel, first coat on, and paint, by the way, this paint dries super fast, so it's not dry yet, but it's almost. And I'm going to do a second layer now, and it's going to really make it look like wood, and you won't see that gray, that primer as much anymore. I'm telling you, this will look good. I know it looks sloppy in the beginning. Okay. So I wanted to make YouTube videos because I've been on YouTube since the days of Chocolate Rain. And I've always liked seeing people's creations. I don't expect to make money from YouTube, but I just like to be a part of the community and the things I do. I love being in the Magic the Gathering community. I love being in the D&D community. I love all the D&D creators, like the Dungeon Dudes and all sorts of different D&D channels. And I think that in the beginning of YouTube, there was people that would make videos just for making videos, and I respect that. Now you can see that people have gotten to the point where they want to make it a career, and that's cool. I'm not knocking that either, but I know that for me, back in the day, people would just make videos for the love of making videos and wanting to kind of keep in touch with the world. And I saw that, man. There was like videos of artists that would play songs in front of their, and they would edit it too. They'd put in some serious video editing, and they'd do it and make videos, and there was no ad revenue, there was no nothing. They just thought it'd be cool to make videos. Now it's become lucrative. So, alright, I'm almost done with the brown here. Kind of get the areas. And I hope you notice how little paint I use too for this. Like, it really does not take much. I use some solid drops, maybe 3 or 4 solid drops, and that's all it takes. And one of the first things I made a mistake when I was first painting too, back to a tutorial, sorry guys, was I like squeezed out a shit ton of paint because I thought I was going to use it all, and then when I was done with my first painting, I had like half of this thing filled with paint, and I was like, oh well, I didn't use that much, so I ended up wasting a lot of my paint, and that was a big mistake. So you can always add more paint if you need more paint. So when you're filling up your palette here, just go ahead and use a little bit, and you can always add more if you want. Just do a couple drops at a time. Unless, of course, you have a giant like dragon you're painting, then it's pretty safe to say you can probably use more, but for something this small, no. Alright, look at that. We've basically got it painted here. Look at that. I like to do one of these little spins and just see, make sure I got everything covered. Anywhere that would be wood. I think that would be metal. Pretty sure. Perhaps it would be wood. I'll paint it wood. I can always add metal over it if I want to. So I'm going to paint it wood. Okay. So all the wood is wood. Alright. Right? Yeah, it looks good. Okay. It looks good. So now we're going to go on to the face. The face of the beast. So for this I'm going to use a purple color. I don't think this color purple is good for it, so I'm going to mix it with some Warlock purple. I'm going to use Alien purple and Warlock purple together. So I'm going to do like this. Drop. And a drop. Another tip for you guys. Do about a drop of each. Another tip for you guys is to have on hand for painting some water, which I have in this little container here, and then some paper towels, because since the paint dries really fast, you can get your brushes gummed up. So basically, as soon as you're done using that color, just kind of rinse it out, clean off your brush, and you're also going to need your paper towels for dry brushing, and you'll see why in a second. So put this aside, switch to another brush while that dries. Mix my colors. You can see this is just going to lighten up the purple a little bit. Maybe a little bit darker than that. So I've got this up here. It's a little darker. Okay, perfect. Let's go for the face. When you do your brush like this, when you're getting in details, you can kind of scrape against your palette and it'll make a flat edge, like a wedge. You can kind of get under. Although, like I said, it's not that big of a deal if I do get a little bit of purple on the band, because I'm going to be painting over it. But if it can be avoided, then avoid it. But you can kind of play fast and loose. And I'm telling you, once you've done this a while, you get better at it. The first thing I painted was a mess, but I just went over it, like I said, and it ended up working out. So, like, the teeth are not going to be purple. I'm just painting them purple because I'm going to be going over them with a different color. Same if I get some on the tongue. It's not a big deal. In fact, you know what I would recommend doing? Getting the inside of the mouth first. But I might have set up. So, yeah, I would say do the inside of the mouth first. And what I'm going to do for the inside of the mouth is I'm going to do a purple inside of the mouth. I'm going to do that too. He's going to have purple insides as well. So we're going to go purple like this, the darker one. And maybe even just to darken it up a little bit, I'm going to take a little bit of the matte black. And so when you're mixing black, it really does not take much at all. So I'm not even going to use all that black I put there. I'm going to take this right here, move a little bit, and then use the rest of this, because black makes things dark. Look at that. That's almost black. Okay, so I have this dark, dark, dark purple. I'm just going to do the inside of his mouth. Look how fast this comes along. I guess technically it's not the quickest of hobbies, but it's not like a little miniature. You can paint it in maybe 30 minutes or so. And of course you can always add more and more detail. For example, I painted that beholder over there, and I could add more detail. The eyes on the top, I could make them more realistic looking. I could take more time for texture, which is more advanced, but I don't like to spend that much time on it. I feel like as a hobby it's fun to relax after work and just kind of paint your miniatures as a hobby and do it for maybe 1 or 2 days, if it takes a couple of days for one miniature, and then that's it. Just spend an hour or so after work relaxing, painting, listening to your favorite audiobook. And look at that, dark inside of the mouth. Okay, inside the mouth painted. Let's drop this. Next we're going to go to the silver bands. Now I did this one with looks like bronze, and I think I'm going to go to silver for this one. So I'm going to go for a darker one. I'm going to go for, a mixture of gunmetal, which these, by the way, these metal ones are fantastic. They use super tiny pigment, so you can't use like acrylic paint you find at the store. Or like if you go to Michael's and you get like paints for them, you really need to get miniature paints because the pigment is so small on this that the metal almost looks like metal. Like it's not like big pieces of glitter like they have in the other ones. And not only that, but those other ones are gloopy and too thick, and the pigment's too big, so you can't really do like a thin layer of paint and have it be, it'll just look translucent. Kind of like how you can still see some of the brown over this. There's a part that I missed, but I will be going over it again. So, I'm just going to take this. Here's where we're going to be a little bit more detail oriented, right? So, I'm going over that brown splotch. Look at that. Go ahead and just do this. What is a mimic? A mimic is a creature that can take over the form of anything, including buildings. And they try to trap people. So just like an anglerfish lures its prey inside by using a little light, a mimic tries to be like something that a character would want. You want a beer? Oh, come get a beer. See what happens. Boom. Now you got a monster attacking your character, and then obviously this guy has a chest full of gold, which unsuspectingly would a guy would go in there and start fucking up because he'd be wanting some gold. All right, look at that. See that? Look at that. That's nice. So down in the comments, if you guys have any tips that you'd like to share, please do. And then also, if you have any suggestions for something I should paint next, that way you guys can kind of see, I'm more than happy to do that too. In the beginning of my painting, I know I would watch other people paint to kind of get ideas on how to blend and how to pick right colors and stuff. Now I'm a little bit more confident in doing things on my own, but for example, that dragon I showed you, the blue and the red and that stuff like that, I watched a guy on YouTube paint the dragon, and I saw his techniques, and it really helped me, because the first one I did not turn out as good, and I had to repaint it. But so if you guys have bought this mimic set from Amazon and are looking for some ideas on how to paint it, this is a good video to kind of see what people do. I also tend to look at Google Images and see ideas for people's paintings. There's a lot of great ones. There's people that paint on Google and they just do crazy colors, and sometimes that's more fun. Instead of just painting it as if you want to make it exactly like how it would be in the monster manual, it's fun to kind of like make your own. And that's why I love the beholders, because like, look at the differences here. You have this guy who is the same miniature as this guy, but I painted them so differently, and I love that. I like having a little variation. So alright, so the silver's taking a little longer because it's a little bit more oriented to detail, but just about done. I need more paint. And then what do you guys think looks better, the silver or the copper? I'm going to ask you once it's done. I'll do a little side-by-side comparison. So until I get my editing figured out too, you guys, I guess, could pop forward, and I'm pretty sure YouTube has its own editor, but you guys can just skip forward to per each part. That's what I recommend, unless you just want to hang out and listen to me talk, or paint alongside like Bob Ross. Just a happy little band, a happy little mimic. Alright, look at that, all silvered up. I'll do the undersides. One thing I like about YouTube and Twitter and all sorts of things like that is I like the community of things. So feel free to comment, and I actually do check my YouTube comments and private messages, and I answer them. I usually talk about Magic. I haven't done anything really about D&D, but I love the community. I love getting ideas, and if you guys watch and you have questions or want, like I said, suggestions, I will get back to you. I love it. I think that's the coolest part about YouTube and the internet. People can be kind of assholes, but I try to be, you know, a positive light on the internet, like a guru. or a Gandhi. I don't want to fall into the traps of the toxic fan bases of nerddom. I know if you guys are on any of them, you know how people can be kind of whiners, but there's also some pretty cool people too. And I would say for the most part there's actually more cool people, so I shouldn't even bring up the whiners. Maybe they just stand out a little bit more. I think people that are more sensitive, that are online, when they see kind of rude people, they're not used to it because in real life people don't talk to them, so it stands out more. But from my experience, especially in the Magic the Gathering community, I've seen some complaints, but the people are really cool. I don't know if any of you guys play Magic the Gathering, but I love it. I play Commander, and the community is pretty cool. There's this guy named Saffron Olive. There's a guy named what is his name? Brian. He's from the Tolarian Community College. I really like him too. And then there's another one called Game Nights, which is a Commander channel, which I suggest you check out. It's super cool if you play. And if you play and you haven't seen those, it's pretty cool. They do an amazing job. And they kind of inspired me to start doing videos as well. Obviously, they live in California and are in the industry of like editing, and like they work in film and stuff like that too, so they're much better at it than me. But over time, I bet you I could do it too. I feel pretty confident in my learning abilities to learn how to do this kind of stuff. Just takes time. So look at that. So you might say that I'm being a little bit more, or not careful enough, but I'm actually going to go over this with brown one last time, and that'll kind of help anything that I missed and cover up the bits that I put silver over the brown that I didn't mean to. As you can see, there's a little bit of that right there, which is fine because that needs another layer of brown anyways. So the silver is just about done, but one of the things I like to do is try and catch it from all light angles and see if there's any gray, which is harder with the silver because silver is so close to gray that you're like, did I miss any? But on the other side, if you do miss it, it's not the end of the world because it's so hard to spot. So right here on this band, there's some silver I missed. Let's see. That looks pretty good. And while I'm looking for the silver, I'm also looking if I missed any spots of the brown too. Yes, I did. The tap. Look at that. Okay, so we're going to go back to brown. Clean this off. Okay, where's my oak? Alright, now this is where our detail is a little bit more important. So, one of the things I'll do is I'll take some brown and put it off to the side here. And if you go like this, I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but if you go like this with it and like paint it down, it kind of flattens the tip of your brush more like a chisel. And that's good because see where that silver went over? I'm just going to like just chisel it in, and I just covered it up. And see right here how it's messed up? I'm just going to go like that. This brush has a little bit of a lip. Move that a little bit. Okay, so we cleaned up that. There's a little bit of silver on the back here. Same thing. I might switch brushes. Let me see if this one's a little bit better for the... Yeah, this one's got a little bit more of a chiseled edge. Like flat. Kind of like if you ever use Microsoft Paint, there's paint tools. You want that flat so you can just go straight up to the line. And this is where I actually enjoy it the most. I found it the most peaceful because it takes more of my concentration. Alright, look at that. Cleaned up. Looking pretty dapper. The inside here. See how that's darker now too, because it's getting that second layer as I'm cleaning up those spots. Alright, so now let's look at him. See how much cleaner that is. We'll do a little spin around. Things are looking good. Missed one right here. Pretty clean. Alright, so I still have a little bit of excess brown here, so I'm just going to do a second layer over the spots that are a little bit different colored. See how it's darker there and light there? So I'm just going to go ahead and go like that. It's going to richen the brown for the oak. And then next, I think we're going to do the blending of the flesh tones and the eyes and the teeth, and then we'll do the eyes last. I guess technically we'll do the base last, which is the gray that's it's sitting on. I don't know what I want to do. I kind of want to have it on a... One of the things I don't like about these miniatures is they don't often make sense. It's like they always use the same base. So like you could have a oak cask and it's sitting on this lumpy bottom, right? Which an oak cask wouldn't be like on stones always. Sometimes it would be inside of a building. Sometimes it would be on a smooth floor. Sometimes it would be the second story of a bar. So that can be a little bit of an issue, but some people take the time to create their own, like they make their own little little bottom parts, which is really cool. Alright, so check it out. Let's see here. It looks pretty good. It's a little silver spillage right there. Check it out. Oh. It's actually nice that I'm doing this in front of the camera because it helps me notice some things that I would have missed, to be completely honest. So did you see what I did there? So it's a little angle, so I'm just going to kind of push the bristles of the brushes into the crack. Alright. So that, now, I think that finally does look pretty clean. Check it out. Alright, so now we've got the last bits to do here. We've got a set of eyes and some teeth. So let's do it. Here's where we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing. First, we're going to do a little bit of wet brushing first, though. So first things first, we're going to use our pink and purple here that we already have ready to go. And the tongue we're going to do a little bit lighter. So we're going to take what we have, put it over here. We're going to take the lighter part of it and just go over the tongue. It's okay that the darker part of the tongue is closer because it'll look like it's going darker in. Okay, tongue is painted. Easy peasy. And when you're painting, always like look from different angles, because sometimes you'll do this and then you'll see, oh, underneath this particular angle, there's a gray spot on the tongue I missed. So it does not hurt. And sometimes you'll see like, oh, inside the mouth there's a little bit I missed too, which isn't really going to be noticed, but we'll put a little bit of purple in there too. So spinning it around, painting the tongue. Tongue looks good. A little bit of inside the mouth I missed. There we go. Just make it so it's not gray. Alright, so now we got the tongue right. We need the tongue to dry before we dry brush it, because if we try to dry brush it, the wet paint that's still on the tongue is going to get onto the brush. So while this is drying, which doesn't take long at all, I'm going to clean up the brush and go for the eyes. Now here's something I recommend you doing. This came with a brush. The brush sucked, so I took my blade that you buy for cleaning, and I didn't go over this, but this actual one didn't really need it. I checked it out. So if you buy a miniature, sometimes you'll see that it needs cleaning. Alright, I already cleaned these ones. Oh, here's one that's not done yet. So, if you look on the beard here, on the bottom, it needs to be cleaned a little bit. I think I did pre-clean this one though, but there's some areas I missed. As well as another good example is on the bottom here, you can see where the mole, or underneath his feet, there's a line, there's like a crack, or next to his foot there. You take the blade and you clean it off with the blade. But you take this, you take your worst brush, and I did all but one single hair. And the reason that's good is because when you're doing dots of eyes, that one single hair is going to come in really good, like just for that one bloop. Alright, but that's all down the line. So first things first, let's choose an eye color. I'm thinking between jungle green and orange. I'm going to do jungle green. Alright, we're doing green eyes up in here. So with eyes, this is pretty complicated because you're not going to do a freaking, like you're not going to paint on the eye. What you're going to do is for something this small, you're going to take your brush and get a glob of paint on the end of it. See, there's like a glob. And you're just going to touch the glob right where you want the eye. So I want to make sure I get this on camera. Go really close. And just transfer the glob of paint. Really lightly. Grab another glob of paint. Alright, there you go. I'm going to do that for each of the eyes. And I might have to do 2 globs because sometimes, depending on the color, they're not as thick and the silver will shine through. But really gentle, because if I twitch, I get paint on the silver, which I can always clean up later, but just want to be really, really gentle. That was a little bit too much. But I'll show you what that looks like up close. So I put the globs on. That's what they look like for eyes. Now they just look like dots until I put the black eyeballs on them. But what's cool is this is going to dry, and then it's going to dry as an eyeball. It's going to be a solid glob. It's going to dry as an eyeball. Okay, so now the tongue should be about ready. It looks a little wet still, but in the meantime I'm going to mix my paints. So I have this purple right here, right? I'm going to lighten it up and also give it some flesh tone. So we're going to go like this. A little bit of that warlock purple, and we're going to go a little bit of barbarian flesh. Give it a fleshy tone. I'm going to put these here, and I'm just actually going to mix them off to the side. So, because I only need a little bit, I'm going to take first the purple, then a little bit of the pink, it's a lot pinker, a little bit of the flesh, and look at it. So that's a fleshy looking pink. And it looks like it could be fleshier, but we're actually going to go over with just pure flesh too. So this is where the dry brushing comes in. You take your, if you were to paint onto it, it would be like this. That's just a solid line of paint, right? So what you want to do, you kind of want to take your paper towel and get most of the paint off to the point where you're not painting this anymore. It's just coming off as kind of like a clear. So you'll see here. Now it's starting to be less. Now it's just starting to stain. It's not actually painting. That's about right. And you can tell because when you go over your skin, it'll just kind of color your skin instead of painting your skin. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to go over the gums. And the tongue. Grab a little more. Okay, now check it out. It's lightened it up a little bit, right? Now for the last bit, I'm going to dry brush on just some flesh tone. I might mix it up a little bit with the pink, but it's pretty fleshy. That's pretty fleshy. So we're going to get it, once again, dry brushed. It's pretty dry. It's not going to do like a thick layer on it. And just lightly brush it over. And that way it'll just kind of highlight it while keeping the dark spots dark. And now I want you to take a look at this. That's going to make the teeth pop, but look how fleshy that looks. And we're also going to do the tongue now too. Just kind of brush over lightly. And now I'm going to leave the bottom side dark, but let's make sure the camera zooms in here. You can see the little lines of dark purple on the tongue, and then the highlighted spots are that fleshy color, which is cool. It's perfect. Right, now the eyeball should be just about dry too. I'll clean up that eye a little bit. Okay. What we're going to do now is do the teeth. So almost for all teeth I do the same thing. You have one darker color underneath. Usually I use skeleton bone. Every once in a while I'll mix it with a little bit of desert yellow, depending how fucked up the teeth I want to be. If I want to have like rotten teeth, then I'll use this with this on top. But if I wanted to have more white teeth, I'll use, here's what matte white looks like. This is just pure white. This is what I like to use for teeth, and this is what I like to use underneath. Now if you look at most teeth, near the gums they're stained. So the first things first is we're going to do some of this. Does not take much at all, especially because this has tiny little teeth. So we're just going to go like this. Really precision here. Just kind of go over the teeth. Up to the gum line. Look at that, his teeth. Alright, looking pretty scary. And the bottom teeth, which are a pain in the butt to paint because they're so tiny. I'm just gonna barely touch the brush to them. Really, I might not even add the white highlights, but I probably will. Although if you're too new and you don't have the control yet, or you're worried you'll put white on the tongue and have to repaint it, just don't. Just leave it as this color. That's fine. It's better than having white spots on your tongue. So we're gonna do the teeth here. Okay. All right, and look at that. Now, last but not least, once we got the teeth highlighted, we're going to just highlight the teeth. And we're going to do that by taking the mummy robes, the lighter color. And you almost want kind of a dry brush, but still wet, because if you just rub it over the top of the teeth, like just do a solid, like kind of flat pass over it, the deeper spots will stay darker and it'll just highlight the tops, like the most crest forward parts of the teeth. But I'm going to go like this. Just barely drag it across. It should just get the crested points highlighted. Alright, there. After we get this done, we're going to do a wash. And what a wash does is it's a darker color, this, but it's like kind of clearish, and it'll soak into the crevices and it'll like really make everything pop because of these like lines. They're all brown, but all the dark pigment will sink into the sunken spots. That'll make all the details pop. So we'll do that too after this. So I said we're almost done. We are almost done, but I did lie about how far we are. So now we're gonna do the eyeballs. Look how fast this is. Look at that. Mimics are cool. They're fun to paint. I like these a lot. My still favorite is the beholder, and I think that if you want to be creative, get a beholder, because one of the things about beholders is that so in beholder lore, no beholders look the same. No two beholders look exactly the same in D&D. So what's cool about that is, like, in order for more beholders to be created, a beholder will have a dream or a nightmare where it's looking at itself, but it'll see a little different, and that will come to life. Their dreams come to life, and that's where these come from too. These are dreams of the beholders. So what they dream comes to reality. But all beholders believe that they are the truest form of beholder. So when a beholder makes a new beholder, that beholder might even try to kill the one that made it because it's like, oh, I am the true beholder, right? So really careful. Just gonna do a line. I mean, we're talking careful, careful, cat's eye. So you can do like, every beholder is different. So you could do like a rainbow beholder, you could do like a goth beholder that's all black and red, you could do anything you want. And I love that. You could do it, it could have like red teeth and an orange tongue and like purple skin or whatever you want. So really I love having this little brush. It's so important to have one of these because you can't do this amount of detail with just a little dot with one of those brushes. You need to have like a single thread and a steady hand. I'm no surgeon. Alright, y'all. A little tiny eye. There we go. Perfect. Whew! A little nerve-wracking. Alright. Okay, so check out the eyes now. Let's see if we can get a close-up. Look at that. Do you see the little black dots on it? Cool. Look how much we've come along. Now we're at the point where we're going to do some washes. We're just about done. Okay. So for the washes, I highly recommend using, I mean, if you have, the only brushes you have are these, that's fine. I would use the most frayed, softest one you have. But since I do actually have some really nice brushes that my mother got me for Christmas, these ones have this very, very soft, almost like I don't know what it's made out of. It's like silky hair. What's nice about that is that it doesn't scrape off any of the paint because this is wet. This is more watery than it is paint. It's very, very watery. It's not thick. It's not thick like the paint is. The viscosity is damn near water. So what this is going to do is rehydrate the paint when it goes onto it, right? So if you have a like a solid brush with like hard bristles, what that's going to do is it's going to, once the paint becomes re-moisturized, it's going to scrape some of it off. So this is just kind of like wash it over. It's going to fill in those cracks with black to make all the details pop a little more. You'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. So the difference between the washed, the dark right here, where you get the dark blacks there, and then the unwashed is pretty different. This one is a little harder to see because you're doing wash over brown, but if you're doing something over like a purple or something like that, here's a good example. I put a lot of wash in between the spikes and it made it darker down there. And I put a wash into the cracks here to kind of make it a little darker, but yeah, so wash is nice and it kind of makes it look more professional. One of the things I think with the like the pre-painted ones, unfortunately I don't think they wash them. I think they just use solid paint colors. Let me see here. I'm actually curious if they even wash them because it seems like they don't, and that makes it such less detail. It makes a big difference. So let me see what we got here. This is a pre-painted guy, and it looks like maybe they did use a wash. Here's another one here too. This is a pre-painted, so a wash just kind of darkens up those little spots. So definitely use a wash, and you want to make sure you're careful with the washes. Too much wash will darken your miniature too much and it'll dry weird. So just kind of very conservatively brush it on. Okay, I need more though. I'm going to put it on the silver, which will help because it will make the silver look a little bit more tarnished. So like bright and shiny and new. Because this Mimic's had a hard life, man. It's been through a lot. And see how the wash darkens those those spots where the crests of them are shiny, but down below it it's actually a little darker now. I like that. That's cool. Wash over. Now, this is going to be weird, but I'm going to go into the cracks and just push wash into it. Just make those cracks darker. And it will. So all the wash will go down into those cracks and give a much, like the teeth now will look like there's, each teeth individually sticks out now because the wash goes into this. Isn't that cool? I love the concept. I'm so glad I got into this hobby. It's really fun. Okay, so I'm going to say this is just about done. I'm going to call it here. I'm going to paint the bottom too, but for the purposes of keeping the video as short as I really can, I'm just going to call it here and have you guys take a look. So all I'm going to do after this is damn near done. I'm going to let it dry, and then underneath I'm going to take a brush and very carefully, like I edged in the brown up to the silver, I'm going to choose a color. I'm just going to do the bottom like this, a really, really, really dark brown before I put the gold on. I'm just going to like edge it with one of these brushes. I'm going to edge it up to the ends, just like that. Just edge the dark brown up to it to where it's not actually painting the miniature. And once I got it edged, I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest in. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'm going to try and make more videos here about all sorts of different things. So thanks for watching, and be active in the community. Just go ahead and talk, ask questions, give recommendations, and maybe meet some other people that are cool, that are learning the hobby, and they can talk to you too. Have a good one, you guys. Thank you very much. Take a look at that. Look at that. Look what we did together like Bob Ross. It's a happy little mimic.